Welcome to Heaven Bound Baptist Church Wednesday night potluck meal and Bible study. I hope you got enough to eat back there. There was plenty. That dessert back there was really good. We want to welcome those who are joining us on Facebook Live and YouTube, and encourage you to come join us in person. You'll never get a better home cooked meal than you will here on a Wednesday night. Tonight we are picking up in our study in Revelation, and we are in Revelation 18. Revelation 18, and I passed out a little bit of a guideline here that I'm going to go over with you. I thought this might be easier to or help us to understand chapter 17 and 18 just a little bit better. Remember, we're in an interlude here at this time, and so what has happened is everything is taken a pause, and the angel is explaining some things to John in more detail. And so in chapters 17 and 18, last week we covered the beast, the religious beast that chapter 17 dealt with, and that God would pronounce judgment on. And tonight we deal with, and I hope to finish it tonight, chapter 18. We're going to deal with, last week was Babylon, this week is Babylon again. The religious Babylon and the commercial, economic, and political Babylon. There's two of them that are mentioned here. And so, as I've already said, this describes tonight, chapter 18, will describe the destruction of the actual city of Babylon. And it's interesting when you say the word Babylon, what people automatically they think of is the nation of Iraq. But I want to get us out of that mindset, because we're not talking about the nation of Iraq. I want us to think of the city of Babylon. And I want you to understand that Babylon is used symbolically here in Revelation, and it refers to Rome. And in fact, when the book of Revelation was written, Christians actually referred to Rome as Babylon. 1 Peter 5:13, Peter writes this. He says, "See who is in Babylon, elect together with you, greets you, and so does Mark, my son." Now, does anybody know where Peter was when he was writing this book? Where was he? He was in Rome. He was in Rome at that time. And the first century Christians, they referred to Rome as Babylon. Now, why did they do that? If you think about that, that's your next question you ask is so why did they do that? Well, in 586 A.D., the Babylonians were destroyed. They destroyed Jerusalem, and they destroyed the temple, and they carried the Jews into captivity. And then in 70 A.D., the Romans did the very same thing. So after 70 A.D., Christians, they just started referring to Rome as Babylon. And in fact, that was the code name for Rome, was Babylon. So in the book of Revelation, Babylon is used symbolically to refer to the city of Rome. So when we read about the destruction of Babylon in chapter 18, we're going to read about, what we're really reading about is the destruction of Rome, of the city of Rome. Now, the reason that Rome is so important is because it is going to be the capital city of the revived Roman Empire. And more importantly, it's going to represent the political, the religious, and the economic system of the beast. See that we talked about the beast was going to control religion, and then it was going to control economy and politics, and all three of them. So that's why Rome is so important. During the first half of the tribulation period, the beast is going to tie his political and his religious and his economic policies all together. That's what his purpose is. That's what he wants to do, is tie them all together. And as part of his economic policy, people are going to have to take the mark of the beast if they want to buy, sell, trade. If they want to do anything, they're going to have to take the mark of the beast. So if you want to have a job, you're not going to be able to get paid unless you have this mark of the beast. If you want to go out and you want to buy something, you're just not going to be able to do it unless they have this mark of the beast. If they want to sell, you're just not going to be able to go out and sell anything. You're not going to be able to do anything without the mark of the beast. And so as part of his religious policy, people are going to, when they take that mark, they're going to have to worship the beast. By taking that mark, you worship the image of the beast. So you see his as religious, his economic policies are all being tied together with his political policies. Does that make sense? It's all tied together. And so that's important. And the reason is because the capital city of the revived Roman Empire is Babylon. And Peter says, she who is Babylon, elect together with you, greets you, and so does Mark, my son. Rome is going to represent the political, religious, and economic system of the beast. And you have to understand that to understand chapter 18 in order for it to make sense to you. And I know this is kind of confusing, and hopefully that helps us out a little bit better. And so that's why I say that Babylon really means, when we say Babylon in chapter 18, we're really talking about, in chapter 18, we're talking about Rome. Because it's the capital city of the revived Roman Empire. And we're not only referring to that city of Rome, but we're also referring to the system that the beast uses for his political, religious, and economic policies. That system that he set up. Those are the two things that we talk about when we talk about Rome. Think of those two things. And that may be kind of confusing. So, and I'm going to explain it here. The reason that we say that that's what it is, that it represents the system of the beast. Think of this. Think of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. It represents the political system in the United States, right? That represents the political system. But Washington, D.C. does not represent the economic system, does it? No. Wall Street does. Our economic system is represented by Wall Street. And so that's the same way that it will be for the beast, in that same way. You see, our political, religious, and economic systems of the United States, actually, they're not supposed to be tied together. They aren't tied together, and they're not supposed to be. But when the beast comes on scene, he's going to gain such authority, and this is important. He's going to gain such authority and such power that he is going to be able to tie them all together. He's going to actually tie his political, his religious, and his economic policies all together in this capital of his kingdom, which is going to be Rome. So he's going to be able to tie them all together. Now, why is that important? It's important because chapter 18, it doesn't just describe the destruction of Rome. It also describes the destruction of the political, religious, and economic system of the beast. And so I want you to think about this tonight, that we're gonna get to the point in chapter 18 where it talks about kings who are looking at the destruction of Babylon, and in other words, Rome, and they're going to begin to lament. They're going to begin to weep and be sorrowful. And so, if this was just one city that was being destroyed, it makes you wonder why they would do that. If it was just one city, it really doesn't make any difference. But and yes, it is a horrible thing. But uh, we're talking about the destruction of Rome, which represents a system. It represents the religious, political, and economic system of the beast. That's why when we get to the kings, when we talk about them, um, they're all going to be so sorrowful. If say if when those floods happened that we had here in Kentucky, some cities were destroyed, and people were sorrowful. People were sorrowful. I mean, but it really didn't. It didn't affect you though, did it? That much. I mean, we collected some stuff and sent to them, but if the system of the United States went down because of that, then it would really affect you, right? That's the difference here. And so to help us understand that, I've got this basic outline here of chapter 18, and I'm going to go as I go through 18. I'm going to hit each one of these things, and we're going to talk about them. And I thought it might be easier if you had something here in front of you to go by. And so the outline is pretty simple. Verses 1 through 3, we're going to see that an angel announces the fall of Babylon. Verses 4 through 8, believers are commanded to leave the city. In verses 4, the command to leave is given. Verses 5 through 8 is the reason for God's judgment upon Babylon and why they need to leave. In verses 9 through 19, we're going to see three groups who lament over Babylon's destruction, who weep and sorrowful over it. In verses 9 through 10, you have the kings of the earth lamenting over her destruction. In verses 11 through 17, you have the merchants who are lamenting over her destruction. In verses 9 through 20, you have the sea captains and the sailors who are lamenting over her destruction. In verses 20, there's a call in the heavens, and all the saints are rejoicing over the destruction of Babylon. In verses 21 through 24, you have the destruction of Babylon, and basically this is a visual picture of the destruction of Babylon. And so it's going to give us a finality of this overall that Babylon's going to be no more. Babylon is gone and is never going to be raised again. This system is dead and it's gone forever. So as I go over this, I want you to look at this outline, and it may help you with chapter 18. And I think if you read this at home, it'll help you understand it maybe a little bit more. So the first three verses in Revelation 18, they simply announce the fall of Babylon. So let's read verses 1 through 3 together. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. Now, hold on. Let me just say that this is not Jesus Christ. Some people preach and tell you that this is Jesus Christ. This is not Jesus Christ. In the book of Revelation, Jesus is never referred to as an angel. Nowhere in the book of Revelation. But I want you to notice something. That it says, after these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. After these things, I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having that great authority. That means that this angel was in the presence of God. And if you remember when Moses was in the presence of God, when he went he went into the tabernacle and into God's tabernacle, and then he came out. What happened to his face anytime he went into the presence of God? It was glowed. It was like it was glowing. It was white as could be. And so that's the kind of illumination. That's the very picture that we see here. This is an angel with great authority. And it means that he is in the presence of God. This angel is in the presence of God. So when he comes, of course, the earth is going to be illuminated by just the splendor, because he has been, like Moses was, in the presence of God, in the glory of God. And so in verse 2 it says, and he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every soul or foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. Now, I want you to notice that verse 1 begins with after this. After this. In other words, remember, after that seventh vial of God, or the seventh bowl, remember the judgment bowls, that seventh bowl is put upon the earth. After that wrath is poured out, after this is what the angel's talking about. So after that seventh bowl is thrown upon the earth. And then the angel announces that Babylon has fallen. In other words, Babylon has finally been destroyed. The word fallen is written in a past tense, right? That's a past tense. It means that it has already happened when this angel announces it. So when that seventh bowl of God's wrath is poured out upon the earth, which is an earthquake, right? There's a huge earthquake that is going to happen, that is going to occur. That earthquake is going to destroy the city of Babylon. Babylon will be destroyed. And now what the angel says next is very interesting. The angel says that Babylon has become a dwelling place of demons, a place for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. Now, this could be interpreted in one of two ways, and I'm going to tell you both ways. And I'll tell you what I think. Babylon, it could be Babylon has become a deserted place, and it's been destroyed, and so now it's deserted. Because in Jewish tradition, you remember demons and unclean spirits lived in deserted places. And in fact, if you remember, Jesus was teaching on demonic spirits. He talked about demonic spirits being cast out, that they would go out into the desert. You remember, they would go out into this desert place, and then they would come back, and they would find a new home, one that's been all cleaned out, and then when they come back, they would bring 7 more wicked with them. You remember that story? So that comes from Jewish tradition. So what they believe, or what some scholars believe, is that is the result of Babylon becoming complete destruction. She's completely deserted, and that's all that it's saying. They say that's all that it's saying. The second interpretation is that this could mean that Babylon became a habitation for demons before her fall, for demons and evil spirits before her fall. That her abominable practices that she's done, it not only opened up the doors for demons, but it attracted demonic spirits. And that's one of the reasons that Babylon was judged. Now, I can't tell you which interpretation is right. And the reason that I can't tell you is because the way this were written in the original Greek, it could go either way. It could mean either thing. But I tend to think personally that the second one is the correct interpretation. I believe that Babylon will become a habitation for demons and a prison for every unclean spirit before she falls. Because we see as things get worse and worse and worse in the world, that's what Babylon is going to be like. And that she falls because of the reasons, because of these reasons, and so she's destroyed. And verse 3 tends to support that a little bit. If you look at verse 3 again, it says, "For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. So, in other words, Babylon enticed the kings to participate in her immorality. She is the main culprit. She's willingly committed spiritual fornication, spiritual adultery. She's enticed the other nations to commit fornication or adultery with her. And so when I say fornication and adultery in the Bible, what does that mean in the Bible? What is it? What are we talking about in the Bible? Idol worship. That's what they're talking about, idol worship. Whenever fornication or adultery is mentioned in the Bible, it represents idolatry worship. And in the book of Revelation, it specifically refers to worshiping the idol, worshiping the image of the beast. So what this is saying is that she, Babylon, entices all the other nations to worship the image of the beast. She's the one that entices them. Now, verse 3 also explains the means by which she is going to entice all of the kings of the earth to worship the image of the beast. She's going to use her promise of power, her enticement of wealth and luxury to try to get them to follow her lead. You see, there's something enticing about having prosperity, right? Something enticing about it. And I don't know what it is about humans, but we'll do just about anything to get rich. You know, look how they play the lottery and all these other things, and they'll do just about anything to get rich. But most of us have a fine line that we won't cross, right? We won't prostitute ourselves. We won't sell drugs. We won't. There's certain things we won't rob a bank. There's certain things that we won't do. But human nature, people want to become rich. And it's kind of interesting that when the large sums of money are placed in front of somebody, the things that they'll do. You watch all these TV shows. What was that one, people going up the mountains for that money? What was the name of that show? Darn it. That was a good example. No, they climb Mount Everest or something like that, and they have several $100,000 on their back, and you got to help each other get up, but then this helicopter comes. And anybody seen that? I love those kind of shows. I can't remember the name of it. But these people were doing anything for money. It was, you had your money on your back, but hey, that last guy that comes over, we got to cut him off after we take his money. You know, they'll do anything for money. And that's what those, look, watch Survivor. Anybody watch Survivor? I love Survivor. My wife won't let me watch it no more, but I love Survivor. She's shaking her head. But they'll do some crazy things for money, won't they? They'll lie, cheat, steal, all kind of stuff. That's the way that we are. When large sums of money are mentioned, that we'll do anything. And we'll do some. There was a show where people would eat bugs and stuff. You remember that? What was Fear Factor? You remember Fear Factor? That's some crazy stuff there. People would do some crazy things. And so what's interesting, though, is when the beast comes in and the beast sets up his kingdom, he's going to set up a system into which people are going to have to take this mark of the beast in order to buy, sell, and do anything. And what they have to do is worship the image of the beast. That's what they have to do. That is the adultery that she participates in. That's the adultery that she entices other nations to, other kings to participate in. In order to become enticed, though, the other kings, they have to come into the system. They have to accept into her system. They have to buy into her system. And she's got to have something to offer them in order for them to buy into it, in order to entice them. And we're going to find out as we read chapter 18 what those things are. We're going to see what entices them with. She's going to entice them with all this wealth, all this luxury, and all, and just how wonderful it is to have all this prosperity. But my point is that this worshiping of the image of the beast opens up the doors for all types of demonic activity And that's why I believe that Babylon is going to become a habitation for demons and unclean spirits before her destruction. Does that make sense? All that stuff is going to be what causes the demons and the spirits and the evilness to come in, and they're going to lead to her destruction. So in verses 4 through 8, I feel like I have to holler up here to be heard. Can you hear me good? I'm not. We fixed the system this weekend, and it does sound different than what it normally does. In verses 4 through 8, believers are commanded here to leave the city before she's destroyed. And so let's look at verse 4. It says that I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues." Now this indicates that there's going to be a few believers who are going to make it to the very end of the tribulation period without being martyred. And we've talked about that before. We said that the majority of the believers are going to be martyred during the second half of the tribulation period. In fact, a few people will be martyred at the first half of the tribulation period, but that's just a few in number. And remember that those that are martyred, they're crying out from the Lord from underneath the altar in heaven in the throne room, and he tells them to wait a minute. He says that you're going to have to wait until the rest of them come. And what's interesting about this is that this is an indication of is that mass murder that is going to occur on the second half of the tribulation period is going to affect almost all believers, but that there are actually going to be some who actually are going to make it to the end of the tribulation period. Not many, a few, but those are the ones that are being encouraged to leave the city. Those believers are being encouraged to leave the city. And I believe that this refers to more cities than just Rome itself. And I'll tell you why I believe that. I believe that they're going to be told to leave every city that's even a part of the revived Roman Empire. Not just Rome. Rome is the revived Roman Empire, but there's other cities that are in cahoots with her. And so I think that they're going to be told to leave all of those cities. And so Rome, being the city of the capital of the revived Roman Empire, it represents this political, religious, and economic system of the beast. But other cities are in the revived Roman Empire. They're going to be underneath the beast's rules. So I believe that this is a command from the angel to leave any city that is in the revived Roman Empire. That's just like if in the United States, that would be each state or each city in the United States. The United States would be judged, and the angel would be telling them to flee the cities that are involved with the Roman Empire. And so I think there's a couple reasons why I believe that, and two reasons that they're told that they should leave, and these two reasons actually would apply to anybody in any city that is involved with the revived Roman Empire. And so I want to look at those two of why they're told to leave. The first one is that so that they won't share in her sins. They don't. The angel doesn't want her to share in her sins. You see, believers in the revived Roman Empire, believers in the tribulation period, are going to be under constant pressure to accept the mark of the beast. They're going to be under constant pressure to worship the image of the beast. This is constant pressure. Simply because you can't buy, sell, you can't trade anything, you can't work, you can't do anything, you can't provide for your family, you can't provide for yourself, you cannot do anything unless you take the mark of the beast. And so if they don't get out of that city, that they may give in to that pressure. That is some hard pressure. Just think about that. We say, well, yeah, I can do it. But I mean, what are you going to eat? How are you going to take care of your family? What happens when your family gets sick? You have nothing because you don't have the mark of the beast. So it's going to be hard. So what this voice from heaven is going to tell them, he tells them that they need to leave the city so that they won't share in her sin. In other words, that they won't give in to pressure. The angel's telling them to leave so that they won't give in to pressure. And the second reason that they're told to leave is so that they won't receive any of her plagues. In other words, they won't be there when she's destructive. They won't be there when her destruction comes. And so now, if you're in the city when the seventh vial or the seventh bowl judgment happens, the wrath of God, that last one, if you're in there when it's poured out, you're going to die right along with Babylon. And so he's telling them to get out because that whole city is going to be wiped out. The whole city of Babylon will be wiped out. So we could look at it and we could say, well, this voice is just telling believers that they need to get out of Rome. But I think the other reason that they're told to leave, which is they could possibly share in that same sin, that they're going to fall underneath that pressure. And I come to the conclusion that this voice from heaven is telling them to get out of any of the cities that are underneath the rule of the beast. Does that make sense? If I lose you, somebody holler. Somebody look at me funny or something. Throw something at me. In verses 5 through 8, they explain the reasons for God's judgment coming upon her. And so let's read 5 through 8. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself, and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. So now verse 5 tells us that her sins are piled all the way to heaven. All the way to heaven. In other words, her sins are so many and they're so great that if you piled them one on top of the other, they're going to reach heaven. And once they reach heaven, God can't ignore them because they're at his footstep, his doorstep. And then verse 6 is just simply the law of retribution is all that is. In other words, the punishment fits the crime. And she's going to get exactly what she deserves. And when you read these verses, and when you get to verse number 6 and you read 7 and 8, it seems at first glance that she's going to receive a greater punishment than what she deserves. Because it says to pay her back double for what she's done. Now, in our English, in our Western civilization, we have to take our Western eyes out of this and read this through Eastern eyes whenever we study the Bible. When we hear that, the first thing that we hear is that she's going to get twice as much, or she's going to be paid back double, give her twice as much. But that's not what God means when he says pay her back double for what she's done. You see, the word double here is translated in the Greek, dibluos. And what it means is double in the sense that an identical twin is the double of his or her sibling. Does that make sense? So if we brought an identical twin up here and we looked at one and we said this is so-and-so, and then we looked at the other and we said, this is her double, right? That's what that means. And so what we mean is that they look exactly like. They're carbon copies of each other. Twins you can't tell apart. They're so hard to tell apart. And so there's actually some discrepancy as to where our English word duplicate comes from. Some scholars think that it comes from the Latin word, and others think that it comes from this very Greek word. But duplicate is a very exact copy of something. So what verse 6 is saying is just make sure she gets exactly what she deserves. In other words, uh, in other words, she did these sins, and this is the punishment. So make sure and make an exact copy that she gets this exact punishment, exactly what she deserves before her punishment, before her destruction comes upon her. And it's not a huge shock, you know. It will be a huge shock to people when she gets that punishment. It's going to be a shock to this whole beast system, the political, economic, and religious system, this whole city of Rome, of Babylon, because they think that they're invincible. They think that they're invincible. If you look at the last part of 7, it says, in her heart she boasted, I sit as queen. I'm not a widow. I'm not going to be warned. You know, and notice that her first attitude is that she boasts that she's a queen. Now, why would she not say I'm a king? You ever think about that? It's talking about a queen. They're calling her a queen here. Because cities are normally, even today, are referred to in the feminine, right? They're referred to in the feminine. And like New York is London. London is she's referred to feminine. Kentucky, Elizabethtown's considered feminine. Louisville's considered feminine. And so that's why she's referred to as a city. And she's saying that nobody can take her down. I'm the queen. I'm the big dog. Nobody can take me down. She's not going to be a widow. And we don't really, it's hard for us to understand that part of that statement, the widow statement, because we don't come from that culture. That is a culture issue. What happened in the culture then to a woman who was not married? She had no protector. She had nothing. Women were thought of as property. They were thrown away. They were cast away, right? Unless there was a man there to protect her, unless there was a man there to make sure the name went down. When the man died, the property went to the sons. It didn't go to the daughters, right? Everything went to the sons. That's why it was so important for a woman to have a male child, to make sure that family line went on. If not, she would be left desolate. And so that's what that's referring to, that male protector. And so what Babylon is saying here is that you can't destroy my man. He is indestructible. We are indestructible. I can't be widowed. She believes that this beast is invincible, that they can't be conquered. And so as a result, when she is conquered, they're shocked. They are thrown into utter shock. So for these reasons, she's going to be destroyed. For one, she became a place, a habitation for demonic spirits, and fornication. She committed spiritual adultery with the image of the beast, and she enticed others to do that as well. She enticed others to follow along with her in that worship of the beast. She enticed these others to follow the beast, and that she used her wealth and she used her power to entice these nations. And then thirdly, her sins are so great. We read that her sins are so great that they're piled up one upon the other. They're huge, and there's so many of them that they're just not. They they could they could say that she martyred the saints, that she did this or she did that, but they're so great that they say that they could pile up one upon the other. And then she boasted that she can't be destroyed. And for these reasons, she will be destroyed in 1 hour, in one day. And what that means simply is that suddenly, she's suddenly going to be destroyed. It's going to be quicker than what she thinks. And so then, if you look at verse 8, uh, therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and famine and mourning, and she will be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord who judges her. So she's going to be destroyed, and we're going to read a little bit later in 1 hour. It says one day, but it also tells us in 1 hour. It's going to be sudden. It's going to be quick, and she's going to be consumed with fire, and we'll read about that, how she's going to be destroyed. And then these three groups are going to lament over her destruction. They're going to be mourning over her destruction in verses 9 through 19. And so I want to kind of break those up into three different groups that I have here, because they each lament over her for different reasons. They each lament over her for different reasons. The first group is found in Revelation 9 through 10, and it says the kings of the earth will lament over her. The kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared in her luxury, they see this smoke, all this burning. Remember, the earthquake has just happened. The city's been destroyed. So these kings see her being destroyed, and they shared in her luxury, right? These kings shared in her luxury, and they see the city burning, the smoke burning, because she's on fire after these earthquakes, after this earthquake happens, and she's going to be totally demolished. And so when an earthquake happens, what do you see in the middle of the city? From all the rubble that falls, you see smoke that comes up, right? And then also, what happens if like when you see a tornado goes through, you see those snaps of lights where it hits the power lines and stuff like that. You ever seen that in a storm where a tornado hits the power lines? The same thing for earthquake. When an earthquake happens and the city completely falls to the ground, that infrastructure that's there, all of that electricity, all of that power is going to start fires as well. So you're going to have all the smoke from the buildings that have fallen, plus all the smoke from the fires. And so the kings are going to see that. They're going to be sorrowful because of that. And they're going to weep and they're going to mourn. And they're going to be terrified over what is happening. And they're going to stand off from afar and they're going to say, whoa, whoa. You know, it's going to be like a battle cry because this city has been destroyed. They're going to weep over her destruction because they actually, remember these kings, they committed adultery with her. These kings worshiped the beast with her, right? And they actually feel like that they are losing a lover. And, you know, they know that they're losing something that's very lucrative. These kings have become rich from this relationship with the beast, and so they're losing that, and they're looking at the things that they will lose, the wealth that they'll lose, the influence, the power that they'll lose, and it's kind of like if you have a buddy that you're involved in with something, and you see them being, the cops pull up and you're standing off afar and they get arrested for it, they get in trouble for it, and you say, "Oh man, that's horrible." But they're getting arrested. But you know, I was in on it with them too. But I'm getting away for now. You know, you ever have that happen? All right. I guess I'm the only one. Okay. So, um, but they know they participated in that as well. I was normally the guy that got caught, uh, but they participated in it with her as well. And so the kings, they have a second reason to weep over her, because they lived off all of that luxury that she had. And did anybody see? Anybody watch the news today? Anybody see where President Trump what was it yesterday? Was in Saudi Arabia? All those countries over. My goodness, the beauty that is over there. They were showing all the all of the advancements that Saudi Arabia has gone through. Uh, Man, alive. Some of that stuff looks so much better than it does here in the United States, man. And that's the wealth. That's the wealth. That's the wealth that these kings are sharing in. That kind of wealth. Um, it was awesome looking at some of the stuff. The buildings that they had that they were sitting in was made out of some of the finest materials that you could ever dream of, and it was just building scraps for them. It was nothing. And so they're losing all that wealth, and they're losing all that power that they received when they were sharing it with the beast. And so when this beast kingdom is destroyed, their income is destroyed. Their influence is destroyed. They don't have the economic prosperity and the wealth um, that that the beast brought to them anymore. Um, so then the next one is the merchants laminating over her destruction, and the merchants in number 11, chapter 11 or verse 11, and the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. So when the merchants are destroyed, that's you. Nobody's buying anything. Nobody's buying any materials. Nobody's buying any cows. Nobody's buying any animals, anything. All that trade stops. And so the merchants don't have anybody to buy anything. So they're mournful over losing that money from people buying stuff. And notice the one thing that they don't mourn over is the loss of the people. They think of themselves and the wealth that they've lost. And then 12 says, it goes on and describes, John tells us some of the merchandise that was lost. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and the list goes on, and incense, fragrant oil, and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle, sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. That's a long list. Nobody's buying that stuff anymore. The merchants aren't able to sell that anymore. So they're sorrowful over that, right? That's what they're lamenting over. They're not lamenting over the people who were killed. But notice the very last part of that says, and souls of men. Now I find that interesting. And souls of men. In biblical days, and back then, there were tons of slaves. Slaves have been around forever, right? But they were considered objects. Slaves, even back then, slaves were considered objects, and that's what it's talking about. People in the New Babylon during the tribulation period, slavery is going to come back in. People will be put into slavery or sell themselves into slavery. Somehow slavery is going to come back in. When it talks about souls of men, they're talking about men who are slaves, who are part of that mercantile system. And that could only mean a person that is being sold and bought. Um, the fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. So all these things that the beast had over everybody, and hey, listen, and let, don't say, before I say this, don't say that I say that the tribulation period will be a good time, because it won't be. So what's going to happen is, during this tribulation period, when the beast sets up in Rome, man, this is going to be happening there. Things are going to be happening there. You're going to want, if you're on this earth, and you're going to want to be a part of that system, because you see prosperity over there. You see wealth over there. You see everything going on over there, right? This is where, when they have that mark of the beast, it's going to prevent, there'll be no more of this. Right now we have to worry about, I think we were talking about earlier about identity theft and using your credit card and stuff like that. Man, there won't be that kind of stuff once you get that mark of the beast. That mark of the beast will be, in some way, somehow, will have to monitor everything that you buy and sell, right? Everything that you trade. You won't be able to go and barter a sack of potatoes for a house. You'll have to have this mark of the beast and have some kind of mark to do electronic. So I'm getting the timer here. Daggone it. Okay, so the mark of the beast is really interesting. You'll have to have that in order to be sold. So the merchants of these things who became rich by her will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So these merchants, they're going to stand back like everybody did when I got in trouble with the police. And they're going to watch me get in trouble. So they're going to watch the beast go down, and they're going to stand back and say, woe is me. I won't be able to have a good time because she's being taken down. But I'm not going to go help her, and I don't want anything to do with any of that. And saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. That just talks to the beauty that this city is going to. This is going to be a beautiful city. And it reminds me when I was watching the Saudi Arabia and all them other places, all them palaces they went through, how beautiful that it was over there. That's what it's going to look like. People are just going to be in awe of everything, man. And it's going to go great for a while. For a while. For in 1 hour, such great riches come to nothing. In just 1 hour, everything is lost. Every shipmaster who may travel by ship, sailors, and as many as trade on the sea stood at a distance. All those people who were attracted to the city are now at a distance. And they cry when they see the smoke from the burning city, saying, what is this great city? What happened to this great city? They're going to be sorrowful and mournful of this great city. They threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, the great city in which we all had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she was made desolate. So we all got our riches from her, and in 1 hour she has fallen. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and your holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. And this is the next group. The calls for the heavens and all the saints to rejoice over the destruction of Babylon is here in verse 20. All those who are in heaven and all those saints who are martyrs will be rejoicing over the destruction of Babylon. And you may at first think, well, that's kind of bad, rejoicing over a city being leveled to the ground. But you have to remember that this city represents the image of the beast, represents the beast, represents the system of the beast, the political system, the religious system, and the economic system. That is what this city represents. Then a mighty angel took up a stone with a great millstone and threw it in the sea, saying, thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more. So in verse 20, I'm going to hurry up. So in verse 21 here, it talks about this angel who takes this great millstone. I was talking to somebody earlier about throwing a millstone. I forget what it was. This here is huge, tons and tons and tons is what this boulder is. And this angel takes this millstone. It's not that little millstone that women use to make what is it? Flour. Thank you. That used to make flour. This is a huge millstone that takes a mechanism to move. You just can't easily move that. And this angel picks it up and throws it into the sea. And the symbolism of that is that once that's thrown in the sea, in our day, we may be able to get it out using some technology, but think about in John's day. That big boulder like that, ever how thrown in the sea, how are they getting that out? They ain't. It ain't coming out. And that's the point. This is the finality of it. That angel, they throw that millstone in the sea, and that is it. It's done. You ain't getting it out. Babylon is finished, is what this is saying. And threw it in the sea, saying, "Thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found anymore." They ain't gonna be able to get her up out of the ocean. The sound of harpists, musicians, flutists, and trumpeters shall not be heard in you anymore. You won't be able to hear any of that. No craftsmen or any craft shall be found in you anymore, and the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you anymore. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore. And that refers to a house. No people will be living in there. In Paul's day, for house, they didn't have electricity, so they'd take these little lamps and they'd put them in the windowsills, and this is what it's referring to there. There'll be nobody living there. And the voice of the bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore, for your merchants were a great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. So she deceived all of the nations. All the nations were deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and of all who were slain on the earth. So because of that, she is destroyed, and she will be no more. It'll be no more. Done. This is the end of the beast, the end of Babylon. How was that for wrapping it up real quick? And so next, is it next Wednesday? Don, are you doing chapter 19? Oh, oh, Don's the whole night. Don's sitting back there saying, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." So next week we'll do chapter 19. Sorry. Huh? I have to look at my phone. Am I here? Am I here next week? Oh, hey, I'm always going too slow, and now I went too fast. All right, we'll work it out. Was somebody doing prayer requests tonight? I can do them. I can do them since I'm up here. Oh, can you shut that off, the streaming? We want to thank everybody that joined us on Facebook Live and YouTube. I always forget that we're live. And I want to welcome you to come by.